Hello, folks. I'm Josh McGee, and welcome to another episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I am so excited and so pumped for this week's episode. We have hit what I think is going to be the most exciting time in the soccer calendar this year. Euro 2020 officially kicks off today. You may be even watching this episode while the Italy versus Turkey match is going on. I'm so excited for this tournament. I've been writing a little bit about it on the Beautiful Game Network. And of course, I'm going to cover a lot of the storylines here today. You can see I've got my Italy jersey over here. I got my Belgium jersey over here. Both teams will be in action over the weekend as Euro 2020 kicks off. So I'm very excited. I'll be talking about that today, as well as a little bit with my guests. Of course, the local soccer scene here in St. Louis, it's getting very busy. We got a very active weekend with a lot of teams in action. I'll be talking a little bit about that at the end of the show as well. Again, very excited for all that I'm going to talk about, but of course, we got to start off with what happened last Sunday. Didn't think it was actually going to be as big of a deal as it turned out to be, but we've got to talk about the U.S. men's national team and the CONCACAF Nations League. So I'll start off by saying this. The U.S. men's national team have some pretty important tests coming up in the latter parts of this year. You've got World Cup qualifying coming up in September. That's got to be at the top of the list. You also have got the Gold Cup here next month. But this past weekend, the U.S. had an opportunity to compete for silverware and also compete against the top teams in their region in the inaugural CONCACAF Nations League. Now, in terms of the makeup of this team, I'd say we were pretty close to what a roster would look like for potentially World Cup qualifiers coming up here at the end of the year. The week started off with a grueling matchup versus Honduras in the semifinals, who had a lot of chances in this match to take the lead. You had to have Josh Sargent coming all the way back to clear ball off the line. You had goalkeeper Zach Steffen having to make a lot of big saves, and the U.S. just couldn't find a way to get the ball into the back of the net. It was 0-0 late on in the match until substitute Jordan Sabachu was able to get his head onto a Weston McKennie pass. He was able to head it into the back of the net, the game's only goal, and to secure the 1-0 win for the U.S. Great moment for him. It's his first major action for the U.S. men's national team. They're trying to get a few of these guys cup-tied, and he was able to get his head onto that, get that goal. Great moment for him. And of course, great moment for the U.S. They were able to find a way to win this match. It's going to be the theme here of these couple of matches at the Nations League. And of course, that would set up eventually, after the other team had won their semifinal, a matchup versus Mexico in the CONCACAF Nations League final. Looking back at the start of the match, I can't help but think of that great boxing quote. I want to say it was from Mike Tyson, but maybe it was for somebody else. He said that everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And that's basically what happened in the beginning of this U.S. men's national team Mexico match. A bad back pass from Mark McKenzie eventually would lead to Jesus Corona scoring in the box 63 seconds into the match, and for Mexico to take a 1-0 lead. Mexico almost went up 2-0 at the 24th minute after dominating the play after that opening goal, but VAR intervened and called off a goal due to offsides. Apparently, that is the break the U.S. would need, because a few minutes later, Gio Reyna would be the one to equalize for the USA. He was there at right place, right time, I believe, off of a corner. Weston McKennie headed the ball off the post, and Reyna was there unmarked in the 6-yard box, and he was able to poke it home to tie up the match, and eventually the U.S. would hold on to that 1-1 score line into halftime. The match would continue. We have subs on both sides of the pitch for either side, and again, teams were looking for that next goal. Eventually, Mexico would be the ones to find it. I believe it was substitute Diego Lainez who was able to kind of cut in on his left foot. He took on Tim Ream, and I believe somebody else, and was able to get a clean strike past substitute goalkeeper Ethan Horvath. Let me repeat that. Substitute goalkeeper Ethan Horvath. Zach Steffen went down a little bit earlier on in the second half. He had to be taken off. It looked like some type of a knee injury. Horvath had to come on. First few moments, he made, I think, a save or two, but this one he was unable to get a palm to, and Mexico would take the lead 2-1. However, the U.S. were able to once again come up with an equalizer. It was kind of cool to think about in this match that two separate times the U.S. would go down, but then they were able to come up with the equalizer. This one came 3 minutes later. Weston McKennie once again getting his head onto a cross from a corner, but this time heading it directly into the net to tie up the match 2-2. The U.S. would be able to hold on and send the match to extra time. In the second period of extra time, after a lengthy VAR review, the U.S. were awarded a penalty after Christian Pulisic was brought down in the box. He stepped up and absolutely buried it into the top right corner for the 3-2 lead. However, Mexico were awarded a penalty a few minutes later thanks to a handball in the box, but Horvath guessed the right way and was able to stop substitute Andres Guardado's shot. The match would finish up 3-2. The U.S. were able to hold on, and they were crowned inaugural CONCACAF Nations League champions. Now, what I haven't mentioned so far yet was the antics and the atmosphere at this match. You had your typical USA-Mexico rivalry type of stuff. You had players going down, players crowding the officials, pushing and shoving, all that jazz. You had fans in the stands, the Mexican fans, unfortunately, doing that horrible chant that they do for goal kicks and other things. However, it got ramped up even more, unfortunately, in this match. You had a lot of fans throwing stuff onto the field after the Christian Pulisic penalty. I know that Gio Reyna was hit in the head by either a bottle or something. He had to be tended to and taken to the side. It was a really ugly scene. Another incident happened in extra time where, again, players were by the sidelines, a lot more stuff thrown on the field. A Mexican player was hit pretty hard by an object believed to be thrown by a Mexican fan, so they were even hitting their own team, unfortunately. It was a really ugly scene. It got out of hand, unfortunately. You like to have this type of stuff in a rivalry in terms of USA-Mexico, just guys going at it in terms of the intensity, but this stuff from the fans got completely out of control. Players got hurt. I would hope that CONCACAF takes a look at this stuff and tries to find a better way of controlling fans in the stands and doing a better job of policing that. So it was unfortunate that there were a lot of incidents involved because it took away from what was an excellent match. It was very entertaining. Maybe not the best soccer, but it was extremely entertaining. And again, an amazing moment for the U.S. men's national team. Now, while the actual stakes of the match weren't as big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, think about it. Really, the only things the USA came away with from this match was bragging rights and a trophy that hasn't really kind of created its value just yet. It's still a brand new tournament. It's obviously not the World Cup or the Gold Cup, etc. But still, this was a big win for the U.S. because they found a way to get it done, right? This was an important victory versus, again, still the top team in their region, their biggest rival, and they were able to find a way to come away with the W. World Cup qualifiers, they're going to be this chaotic. Sometimes you're not going to have things go according to plan. It's not going to be pretty, but sometimes you just have to have the ability to throw tactics out of the window and find a way to get the W. That's what the U.S. were able to do here, and it was important versus who they were able to do it against and how they were able to do it, and in terms of the format in a final that they were able to get it done. Now, this match still left us with a lot of questions for players at certain positions. You think about defense. Mark McKenzie had a rough game. There's no way around it. He had some good moments, but overall, it was rough. You're still trying to figure out the right combination of guys in the midfield, who to play up top, etc. Also, Greg Berhalter's tactics got kind of exposed here, trying out a little bit of a different formation. It didn't work. Obviously, initially, you can't really account for the back pass there for 1-0, but after that, Mexico were just overrunning us, especially in that first half. Some of his substitutions, taking off Serginho Dest and leaving a tired Tim Ream exposed there on the outside for Mexico's second goal, I thought was a bit of a head scratcher. But in the end, hey, it's good to have these learning moments to learn what to improve upon and still come away with the win, right? That's the important thing. There's things, obviously, that the coaching staff and the players can still learn. We're still trying to figure things out, but at the end of the day, it's a results-driven business, and they're able to still get things done. The U.S. then followed up that big win on Sunday a couple of days later with a huge 4-0 victory over CONCACAF opponent Costa Rica in a friendly. You saw the likes of Brendan Aronson and Daryl Dike score in this match, and just kind of went to show how much that momentum has carried over from that win on Sunday, and also the depth that the U.S. has occurred over the past couple of years. Again, Dike and Aronson have been real bright spots just at their club level and also for the U.S., and yet they didn't feature in the final versus Mexico. So it's kind of cool that the U.S. has these options, these different options going forward at different positions, and they're able to kind of plug and play and still pick up big-time results. Long term, who knows, right? You kind of have to hope that this will transfer over to even more high-stakes matches, especially to World Cup qualifiers, when we're going to see Mexico again, we're going to see Costa Rica and Honduras again. But in the end of the day, as of right now, you just kind of have to enjoy the moment, right? It was a huge victory for the U.S. They beat Mexico. That's always a great feeling. They did it in a final. They picked up a trophy, finally, right? I mean, we've been wanting that forever. So it's still a lot of good momentum and a lot of good feelings right now as we head into the Gold Cup and more important fixtures here down the line. So let's keep riding the wave. Let's keep building upon this momentum, and let's see how it transfers over to the U.S. men's national team going forward. Okay, like I said, Euro 2020 kicks off today and through the weekend. Very excited that we're finally getting this tournament after a year delay due to the pandemic. Of course, there's plenty of storylines to talk about. Who are the favorites? Who is under the most pressure? Who are some players to look out for? If you want my full in-depth preview of all 24 teams, you got to go to the Beautiful Game Network and check out my articles. But I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a taste today and talk about a couple of storylines per group that I think are worth mentioning. So here we go. Let's start off in Group A, and I believe the favorite in that group has to be Italy. Main question is, can they keep up their offensive prowess from qualifying? They were one of the top scoring teams during qualifying, not something you're used to seeing from an Italian national team. They're built upon their defense. They got so much offensive talent now. You got Ciro Immobile, Lorenzo Insigne, Federico Chiesa, a lot of different players who offer a lot up top for Italy. If they can continue to keep scoring at this high of a rate, they got to be considered one of the favorites here at Euro 2020. The other storyline from Group A, will Turkey's defense remain formidable? Turkey only conceded 3 goals during qualifying. They actually only finished 2 points behind France in their group. That was because of their defense and the personnel that they've been able to bring in now for this team. Can they keep that up? They've got some good attacking talent up top. I think they'll be able to score some goals, especially in this group. But the key for them going forward and making some noise further down the line would be their defense. If they're able to keep that up, I consider them a little bit of a dark horse, one of those teams who could potentially make a run like Wales did, like Iceland did. But it's going to come down to the fact of the matter of, can they keep up the defensive form that they've been showing? Next up, Group B, main storyline has to be, can these guys, Belgium, get over the hump? The golden generation, they're running out of time. They've fallen short here the past couple of major tournaments they've been at, quarterfinals in Euro 2016, and then the semifinals of the 2018 World Cup. So much talent across the board. Kevin De Bruyne, Romelu Lukaku, Eden Hazard, just so much great players available to them, but they've been unable to get the job done and go all the way. Can they get it done this time around? Is Roberto Martinez the right manager for the job to get them there? They've brought back French legend Thierry Henry to the coaching staff. Will he be able to provide a little bit of an extra boost? We'll see. This is their group to lose, but of course, they're looking ahead towards the further rounds of Euro 2020. The other storyline from Group B, is Denmark this year's Wales or Iceland? Right now, they're the betting favorite in terms of kind of that underdog who could make the furthest run at Euro 2020. And that's because they have a solid group of veterans. They got Kasper Schmeichel in goal. They got an interesting dynamic of midfielders and attacking players. They still got Christian Eriksen, who's been doing great things for them. It's possible. Right now, I would have to think that because Belgium's in their group, they're going to be fighting for second place. But still, if the matchup is right going forward, maybe Denmark can pull off a little bit of a run. So definitely a team to look out for in terms of someone who could surprise a couple of the bigger teams at this tournament. But we'll just have to see if they can put it all together. Moving on to Group C, main storyline has to be, are the Netherlands back? The Dutch have missed the past couple of major terms, but they return here to Euro 2020. They're not going to have Virgil van Dijk. Obviously, that would have been huge for them. It would have made them serious contenders if he was there. But still think they got plenty of talent across the board on defense and on offense to at least top this group and potentially make some noise in the knockout stages. We're going to have to see if manager Frank de Boer's system works out for this team, but still really looking forward to the Netherlands being back at the Euros. Another storyline for this group, I think it's just a fun one. Will North Macedonia get their moment? This is their first time qualifying for a major tournament. We've already seen them come up with the result in World Cup qualifying that was quite shocking. Can they at least come up with one moment? Could they even get maybe a win at this tournament? I don't expect them to move on, but it's still really cool to see a brand new country make a major tournament for the first time. Excited to see what they can contribute, and hopefully they get at least a moment or at least can score one goal here at the Euros. Next up in Group D, obviously the main storyline is England. Can they overcome the pressure? They're under the most pressure out of any team at Euro 2020. Of course, most of that is self-created by the media and their fans, of course, but still, there's so much attacking talent in this team, a lot of young talent, and of course, coming off of that semifinal run at the 2018 World Cup, expectations are high for Gareth Southgate and for England. In this group, I think they can win it pretty easily in terms of the matchups going forward. Some things might have to fall their way. They're going to have a lot of matches at home there at Wembley Stadium, so they got to take advantage of that. So we'll have to see if England can take the next step here and make the final at least at Euro 2020. The other main storyline from Group D, are Croatia still a thing? Most of their best players are over the age of 30 after that great run to the final of the 2018 World Cup. Can they still get it done? Can they still be a factor in this group? And going forward, if they're able to advance out of it, they still got Luka Modric. They still got a great cast of other midfield players. Talent is there, but in terms of recreating that magic from the World Cup, it's going to be a tougher task now going forward since they're a few years removed from it. Moving on to Group E, I want to start off by talking about Spain. Can they overcome this pre-tournament adversity? It started with national team manager Luis Enrique not selecting a single Real Madrid player for his squad, including Sergio Ramos. And then, of course, Sergio Busquets, their captain, testing positive for COVID-19. They've had at least one other positive test with the player. They've had to quarantine. They were forced to miss their final match for the Euros. Can they overcome all this adversity? They're already a team kind of in a bit of a transition. They weren't really considered one of the top favorites at Euro 2020 already, But now with all this pandemonium and the problems that they're having before this tournament, could it lead to an even earlier exit? We'll have to see if they can find a way to overcome all the problems that they've been having. The other storyline from this group, can Robert Lewandowski carry Poland even further than they've gone before at the Euros? Lewandowski, again, best striker in the world, coming off of that record 41-goal season in the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich. But basically, in terms of the talent on Poland, he stands alone, really, as that one game changer that they have. Can he do it? Can he come up with a few more goals than he has in the previous big competitions that he's been a part of with Poland? If he can, Poland could possibly even win this group with what's going on with Spain, and that could set up a pretty good matchup for them going forward. However, if he's unable to do so, there's not much there for Poland, and they could easily crash out early if he is not on as good a form. So we'll have to see. Looking forward to seeing what Lewandowski can do with Poland here, not working with as much talent as he has at Bayern, but still, best striker in the world, exciting to see what he could do. And last but certainly not least, Group F. It's amazing to look at it every single time and see the teams that are in this group. All I got to say is poor Hungary. That's all I got to say because of the teams in this group. Let's start off with the first storyline, which has to be France and Portugal. Can either one of them make history? France, they're the reigning World Cup champions. They had the chance in 2016 to win the Euros before the World Cup, but they lost to Portugal in the final on home soil. Can they do what they did in 1998 and 2000, which is go back-to-back with the World Cup and the Euros? Of course, they got to go up against Portugal, who are the reigning Euro champions. They're seeking to be the first repeat champion since Spain did it in 2008 and 2012. Ton of talent on both teams. Kylian Mbappe for France, Cristiano Ronaldo for Portugal, leading either one of those sides, but still the depth on those two teams might be the best at this tournament. We'll have to see if they're able to each go on a run, utilize that talent, and go all the way. And again, if either one of them win, it's going to create some type of history. The other major storyline from Group F is, can Germany give manager Jogi Löw the proper send-off? Löw is leading Germany at the conclusion of Euro 2020, and that is in large part due to their embarrassing effort at the 2018 World Cup, that country's worst finish in their history, not being able to make it past the group stage as the reigning champions. Can they at least do better here, right? They're going to use a lot more younger players. They got a lot of guys with some talent, thinking about like Serge Gnabry, Timo Werner, and Kai Havertz, but they're not all in fine form from their club seasons. Can they put it all together here and come up with some results? And again, like I said, at least do better than what they did at the World Cup. So we'll have to see if they're properly motivated to give their manager Löw the proper send-off that he deserves. They're an interesting team. Obviously, you fear Germany because of the experience, because of the pedigree, because of the talent, but they're not as feared as they once were. So we'll have to see what they can come up here with, again, in the toughest group at the Euros. So there you have it, some rapid-fire storylines for Euro 2020. I'm very excited for this weekend, of course. And again, I think it's going to be a great tournament. There's going to be some fans. You've got 11 host cities, so it's going to be really cool to see all the scenery and all the stadiums here in the different countries. You've got all your expected favorites, but of course, there's always surprises, twists, and turns. And the team that you don't expect to make it far somehow makes a run to like the quarterfinals or the semifinals. And that's what makes these tournaments so exciting. So again, it's going to be really exciting to see some high-level European international football here this summer. And yeah, looking forward to continuing to cover Euro 2020 here in the next few weeks. Okay, so Euro 2020 is not the only high-level international soccer going on here this summer. I want to get to some action from this past week and also look ahead to some high-stakes soccer coming here soon. I want to start off in South America because we had that rescheduled round of World Cup qualifying that was postponed due to the pandemic. They had it here over this past week, and there were some pretty interesting results. Starting off with Brazil, they continue to maintain their perfect start to qualifying, picking up another couple of wins here. It was a pair of 2-0 decisions over Ecuador and Paraguay. You had Neymar at least scoring once in one of those qualifiers, but Brazil, they've looked very good here so far in qualifying, especially their offense. I don't think they're going to have any problems going forward qualifying here at the top of South America's group for the World Cup. Then you had Argentina, who are still in second place in the group, but they dropped points in both their matches over this past week. It was a 1-1 draw versus Chile. Messi scored a penalty, but that was canceled out by, I believe, an Alexis Sanchez penalty. And then they drew 2-2 versus Colombia, who scored in the 94th minute in order to secure that 1 point. That was coming off of a big 3-0 win, I believe, over Peru by Colombia. We talked a little bit about their slow start to qualifying, so the fact that they were able to pick up a point versus Argentina and get a win, it's a nice bounce back there for them. In third place in the group, it's still Ecuador. They were able to maintain that place, even though with that loss versus Brazil. Then Uruguay, they are in fourth after 2 0-0 draws. So as you would expect, Brazil, Argentina are at the top of this group, but there's some cracks at least there in Argentina. Uruguay, Colombia, they're starting to pick it up just a little bit. Chile, another big team. They're not getting the results quite as of yet. Ecuador is still going strong there in third. So good to see that South America can get back on track here after that postponement because of the pandemic. Hopefully things can go on a little bit of a normal schedule. We can continue to see those qualifiers here over the next year or so. However, the next important thing on the docket for those South American teams is Copa America, which kicks off on Sunday. That tournament was moved to Brazil. A lot of controversy over that decision in terms of the high coronavirus rates there in that country, but that's where it's going down. You have in Group A, the headliners are going to be Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile. And then in Group B, you've got Brazil, Colombia, and Ecuador. Should be an interesting tournament. Again, most of the major players are going to be there. We'll have to see if Brazil can continue their fine form. Can Lionel Messi once again try to lead Argentina through a major tournament, pick up a trophy there? Of course, some of these other teams, Colombia, Chile, and the big names that are there, we'll have to see if they can kind of get into the mix as well. So again, more exciting international football here this summer. It's good, again, to have the South American teams still feature with the Euros going on. But yeah, definitely excited to see how this Copa America plays out. And lastly, while the top teams in CONCACAF were focused on the Nations League, the rest of the teams were busy wrapping up the first round of CONCACAF World Cup qualifying, and we had the 6 winners of those groups. Those winners would be El Salvador, Canada, Curacao, Panama, Haiti, and St. Kitts and Nevis. Those teams will now face each other in a home and away tie to determine the 3 other teams moving on to the next round, which is where the US, the Mexico, and some of the other big nations will start up their World Cup qualifying campaign. The matchups are St. Kitts and Nevis versus El Salvador, Haiti versus Canada, and Panama versus Curacao. So very exciting that we're advancing here to the next round of CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. If you're asking for my predictions, got to think that El Salvador will take care of St. Kitts and Nevis, which would be really cool because, as we know, former St. Louis FC player Joaquin Rivas has been a part of that El Salvador team trying to qualify for the World Cup. In the next matchup, got to think that Canada will take care of Haiti. You think about Alphonso Davies and some of the other guys that they got on Canada, they should be able to get it done. And in the last matchup, got to think that Panama, who's been a big part here of CONCACAF World Cup qualifying, should be able to get it done versus Curacao. But still, very exciting times. We're getting to that point where the U.S., Mexico, Costa Rica, Honduras, and everybody else will be in that final round of CONCACAF World Cup qualifying in order to determine who will be moving on to Qatar in 2022. So again, very exciting results. We'll have to see going forward how everything shakes out. Okay, let's talk some soccer in America. While there may not be as much action on the pitch going into the weekend, there's still plenty of news to get to here. Let's start off with MLS and the announcement this week that U.S. men's national team forward Daryl Dike will be moving back to Orlando City SC after Barnsley elected to not pick up the purchase option on him. Dike scored 9 goals in 22 appearances with the English Championship club. So again, maybe a little bit disappointing that Dike isn't continuing with Barnsley, but it would have been great if they had been somehow promoted to the EPL. But still, great to have Dike back here with Orlando and MLS. You got to think at some point he will make a big money move to a different club overseas. But still, good to have him back with Orlando, who've been doing great things so far in the Eastern Conference. Got to keep up that playing time. Got to keep that momentum that he's been having with Barnsley, with the U.S. men's national team, and continue to develop and continue to move forward. The other big announcement for the league this week was, after the match was postponed last year due to the pandemic, the MLS All-Stars will be going up against the best of Liga MX in August at LAFC, I believe on August 25th for the All-Star game. I believe this is the first All-Star game since 2005 that will feature a matchup not including a major European club coming from overseas during their preseason. This is going to be really cool. Obviously, the seeds are being planted of a potential merger between MLS and Liga MX, but still you want to at least keep that relationship strong, and this is a great way to do it, to see the best of both leagues going at it. Very excited to see the different matchups that can happen here in this match. So again, glad that we're getting this match now. We didn't get it last year, we're getting it this year. Again, excited to see how MLS stacks up against the best from Liga MX. And lastly, just real quickly, like I had previously mentioned, I believe on last week's show, the MLS, they're currently in a break that they put into the schedule, so there's not many matches going on. In fact, there's only one match going down this weekend, but I want to highlight it here real quickly. That would be Sporting KC hosting Austin FC. Sporting KC, they are currently second in the Western Conference, but they can go over the Seattle Sounders with a win here and take first place. Austin FC, they're currently in 11th place, but they can move up as high as 6th place with the win over Sporting KC. So it's an important match because nobody else is playing. These two clubs can take advantage of that and pick up 3 points. It could see them hop important places in the Western Conference standings. Austin FC, they're still trying to get things together. They're still trying to pick up results. Whereas with Sporting KC, now that they're kind of fully healthy, they've got Alan Pluto there up top as striker. They've been doing great. This would be an important win for them to take over first place. So, I mean, that's your only option this weekend for MLS, but it's a nice little matchup there in the Western Conference. We'll have to see who can take advantage of this opportunity and come away with the W. Okay, let's next talk about some women's soccer and two huge news stories that broke this week with 2022 ramifications. Let's start off with USL, who announced this week that they will be relaunching the W League in 2022, as well as announcing the 8 inaugural members who will be participating in that first season. The league expects to get up to 30 teams in time for next year and for that first season. This was a huge announcement. The W League, I believe, was last kind of in action in 2015. Now the USL are kind of revamping it a little bit. It's going to be another path to pro soccer here for women's soccer players, which is exciting in itself. Maybe a little bit confusing because it's another league in terms of the organization of women's soccer here in the U.S. I don't know how it will conflict with the NWSL. And again, I'm not sure about the kind of the particulars of it in terms of the payments, the professionalism here of this particular league. Still a lot of questions to be asked. Of course, there are only 8 teams, and they could get up to 30 teams. I've noticed a couple of USL Championship clubs, some USL League One clubs. They're going to have a team in this. Going to be interesting. Again, great to have more soccer, more opportunities for women's players here to get into the professional ranks. But in terms of the organization, in terms of the kind of the relationship with the NWSL and all the other soccer here in the U.S., going to have to answer some questions there going forward. But still, very exciting news to get another women's league here coming up next year in 2022. The other big news story that broke this week came from the NWSL, who announced this week that San Diego will be getting an expansion franchise beginning in the spring of 2022. Former U.S. Women's National Team Manager and World Cup champion Jill Ellis will be the president of this brand new club. Remember, this is kind of a result of that failed MLS/NWSL bid from Sacramento. Same guy leading the project, but unfortunately moving from Sacramento to San Diego. That's tough, obviously, of course, but a very exciting opportunity here for San Diego, who have got a great soccer team. We recently just seen them get the Loyal there in the USL Championship. Now they'll be getting an NWSL franchise. Again, really cool to see Jill Ellis take on this role. Obviously, she killed it as U.S. Women's National Team Manager, but now she takes the next step up and will be a part of the front office. So excited for her. Excited to see what San Diego can do next year in the NWSL. Now I want to get to the results from this past weekend in the NWSL. They are not in action this weekend because they're currently on an international break. So it gives us more time to focus on what went down this past weekend. Starting off with the Chicago Red Stars, who picked up a huge 1-0 win over the North Carolina Courage. You also saw St. Louis's own Alyssa Mutz make her return from injury after a couple of years off. She came on as a substitute. Still, very big win there for Chicago. The Courage, they've been one of the better scoring teams here in the NWSL. To shut them out, very impressive result. Then you had New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC hold on for a 1-0 victory over OL Reign. Very impressive result there for Gotham. You had Portland Thorns FC. It seems like they've been able to get back on track. They were able to beat Racing Louisville FC by a score of 3-0. I believe Lindsey Horan scored the third and decisive goal there in that match. Then you had the Houston Dash hold on for their second consecutive victory. This time it was a 1-0 decision over Kansas City. And then lastly, like I had previewed last week, big top of the table clash between first and second. This time it was the Orlando Pride taking on the Washington Spirit, but that match would end in a 1-1 draw. So again, some good results there. Orlando, they scored the opening goal in that match, but Washington, I believe, were the ones that were able to quickly equalize there in the second half. So a little bit of a stalemate there. Orlando remained at the top of the table. You have Portland, who seems like they've gotten back on track after that kind of mini losing streak that they've had. They now have won their past 2 matches, so it seems like things are okay there. Again, team to keep your eye on would have to be the Houston Dash. It seems like they're figuring things out a little bit and getting back to that form that they showed last year at the Challenge Cup. So maybe they can be a player here in the regular season. But still, a little bit of a break here for the NWSL, but it's been a good start to the regular season and looking forward to when everybody comes back, see how the action picks up. Okay, now let's get to what has been another very busy weekend in the USL Championship. We're going to start off with this past weekend's results that caught my eye. Starting off with the Charlotte Independents ending the Tampa Bay Rowdies' perfect start to their season by beating them 1-0. Very impressive win there by Charlotte. Then you move over to Hartford Athletic, who hit 7 past New York Red Bulls 2 and beat them 7-0. Hartford, they've had a pretty impressive start to the season, albeit here, I believe it was their opponent that kind of led to this type of scoreline. New York Red Bulls 2, they've had a very tough start to the season, so I think it's a little bit more than that, but still Anytime you hit 7 goals past an opponent, that's got to be eye-catching in itself. Then you had Phoenix Rising FC and San Diego Loyal play to a very entertaining 2-2 draw. Rio Grande Valley FC Toros continued their good start to their season with an impressive 4-2 victory over the Miami FC. And lastly, in the Central Division, Birmingham Legion FC beat FC Tulsa 2-1, and Atlanta United 2 held on for a 1-0 victory over Louisville City FC. I believe Kyle Gregg made his first start for Louisville in that match, but he was unable to get on the score sheet. I also believe former St. Louis FC goalkeeper Alec Khan came up with a huge penalty stop there late on in that match. Then, of course, you had a lot of fixtures in midweek, once again for the USL Championship, specifically on Wednesday. Starting off with Indy 11, they lost a match this past weekend, and here midweek, they lost their second straight match, this time a 2-0 decision to El Paso Locomotive FC. Then you had Atlanta United 2. They were held to a 2-2 draw versus Sporting KC 2. And then out west, you had Orange County SC play San Diego Loyal to a 1-1 draw. In these past 2 Loyal matches, Jack Mayer has started both of them for San Diego. So the action has been fast and furious and often with a lot of midweek fixtures over these past 2 weeks. That doesn't seem like that's going to change. Of course, always focused on that Central Division. You see Birmingham there at the top, but we've really seen Atlanta United 2 really come on. We've seen former St. Louis FC players Alec Khan in goal, and also the captain there, Bradley Camden-Theo, who scored a goal, I believe, in midweek. They've been very impressive. They had struggled over the past couple seasons, but they've kind of had a little bit of a rebirth here in this season. Of course, you've seen teams like Indy 11 and Louisville struggle a little bit here over the past couple weeks. We're used to seeing them at the top. So again, very interested to see how that specific division plays out. Again, the Rowdies losing, that's very much newsworthy because they had that perfect start to the season. But of course, a lot of good action out west as well. Looking ahead to this weekend, and obviously there's a lot of good fixtures in midweek that eventually I'll get to here on next week's episode. But in terms of this weekend here coming up in the next couple of days, looking forward to Pittsburgh Riverhounds SC versus the Miami FC. Pittsburgh had a little bit of a bounce back over the past couple weeks. We'll see if it continues here versus Miami. You also got San Diego Loyal hosting LA Galaxy 2, Los Dos. They're challenging Phoenix there at the top of their division. They've had a really good start to the year. And lastly, Charlotte Independence, we'll see if they can take this momentum from the victory over Tampa and apply it to Hartford Athletic. Hartford, they haven't played the top teams in their division yet. They haven't played Tampa, and they haven't played Charlotte. So we'll see how their offense, how they're able to handle coming off of this huge win, and how they are going up against the top team. So again, another good weekend here in the USL. A lot of great midweek fixtures also coming up that I'll get to on next week's episode, but still very entertaining start to the season. And unlike these other leagues, they're kind of breaking off a little bit here over the next couple weeks. The USL is continuing, so it's a good time to check in on the league and see how everybody is doing. Okay, now I want to talk about some St. Louis soccer news, and I want to start off with the 2 guys who feature for the U.S. men's national team in that CONCACAF Nations League final. And that, of course, would be Josh Sargent and Tim Ream. We had a couple of updates on their club situations here over this past week. Starting off with Josh Sargent, there was a report that Borussia Mönchengladbach in the German Bundesliga have interest in purchasing Sargent from Werder Bremen. Of course, we know Werder Bremen, they've been relegated from the Bundesliga. They'll be going down to the 2nd division. Mönchengladbach, they came up maybe a point or 2 shy of European football next season, but still a very good offensive team, a lot more talent there. Could give Sargent an excellent opportunity to improve his goal-scoring record and, of course, improve his overall type of play. Then you've got the veteran Tim Ream, who agreed to sign a new contract with Fulham, who, as we know, were relegated to the English Championship after this season in the English Premier League. In terms of the details on his contract, I know it's short-term, maybe 1 or 2 years, but still good for Ream. He's going to be sticking around with Fulham, one of the veterans of that team. Again, we know in terms of the contract, it might be up in 2023. Of course, a lot of people around here have been speculating that he could be one of St. Louis City SC's first big signings. Again, not sure because of his age. We kind of saw it a little bit there with the U.S. men's national team win versus Mexico. Kind of got a little bit exposed there on defense later on in the match, but still, he's a good veteran presence. He's done a lot of great things in his career in terms of helping Fulham get back to the Premier League. I have no doubt that he'll be a part of that there next season. Okay, up next, let's talk about St. Louis Scott Gallagher, who picked up their 2nd win of their USL 2 season on the road with a 3-2 victory over FC Wichita. This was a very exciting match. SLSG got their first goal in the first half from Richard Ruiz, but Wichita tied it up, and that's how the score would go going into halftime. Very late on in the match, St. Louis University's John Klein would score in the 89th minute, so it looked like SLSG were going to pick up the victory, but Wichita would score just a few minutes later in stoppage time. So the score then at that time was 2-2, and that late on, you think that they would be able to hold on there for the draw, but It was Jacob Biu for St. Louis Scott Gallagher who was able to collect a loose ball in the box and fire it home very, very late on into stoppage time in order to ensure the full 3 points for St. Louis. Very entertaining match. It seemed very cool to see this team kind of find a way there at the end, despite how late on it was in the match. They didn't give up. They found a way to get those goals. And yeah, a very important 3 points here at this point in the season for SLSG. Very good moment for them. Great moment for those players. They now finally return home. They've been on the road here for the past couple of weeks, but they return home this Saturday night to take on Chicago FC United. Going to be an interesting matchup there, but still very exciting to have them back. And hopefully they can continue to build upon that momentum here. And yeah, we'll see how they look on Saturday. Of course, I'll be there to pick up some post-game sound for you guys. We'll see if I can talk to a couple players. Of course, we'll talk to head coach Steve Trishu. But yeah, very exciting times for Scott Gallagher, picking up a huge win on the road. And hopefully they'll be able to build that momentum forward. Okay, I've been previewing both of these clubs over the past week. And finally, Fire and Ice Soccer Academy and the St. Louis Lions were able to start their 2021 WPSL season this past weekend. Let's start off with Fire and Ice. They lost their opening match narrowly by a score of 2-1 to FC Pride. I believe they conceded a late penalty in that match, but they were able to pick up their first win of the season the following day with a 1-0 victory over Lady Victory FC on a goal from SLU's Brianna Hatfield. That was an excellent result against a tough team. Now they will look to build upon that momentum with their opening home schedule this weekend. They'll have 2 matches, the first being versus the Dayton Dutch Lions tomorrow night, and then on Sunday afternoon they will take on FC Pride. That was the team they lost to there in their opening match. As far as the St. Louis Lions are concerned, they had a tough start to their season. They lost their first match to Lady Victory FC by a score of 9-1, and then they would go on to lose to FC Pride by a score of 4-2. University of Wisconsin Milwaukee forward Kat Van Boeven scored all 3 goals this past weekend for the Lions. The Lions only have 1 match this weekend, which is at home on Sunday afternoon versus the Dayton Dutch Lions. So I talked about this a little bit last week on the show with head coach Jeff Lorimer. He said that this team doesn't have a lot of WPSL experience. I believe they only have 1 player with previous experience in this league. So it's pretty much a brand new roster. They're still trying to figure things out. They're trying to mesh together and learn the nuance of this league. So I'm not surprised in terms of the margin of these losses. Hopefully it will get better as these players get more experience and they continue to learn to play with one another and play within the system. But we'll just have to see going forward in terms of the development of those players and how they get adjusted to this league. Also coming up over this next week is the first derby between these 2 local clubs. Fire and Ice will host St. Louis Lions, I believe, this upcoming Wednesday. Very excited to go out and watch that match and see these 2 clubs go up against one another. Hope to have some post-game sound for you all from that match. But still exciting times here to get some local women's soccer back underway this summer. And yeah, these teams are going to have a lot of home matches. You definitely want to go check them out and see how they're doing, just see the next, wave of women's soccer players here in St. Louis. Again, always want to support what's going on here in this town. Okay, for my guest this week, I brought back Bill McDermott to talk about the events from this past weekend and also look ahead to the great weekend of soccer, not just here in St. Louis, but internationally. Hope you enjoy. Well, for my guest this week, I'm excited to bring someone back who will be able to offer their historic perspective on the events from Sunday night, as well as on the Euros, which will be kicking off this weekend. The one and only Bill McDermott. Bill, good to be talking with you again.
Likewise, Josh. How you been?
I've been doing great. It's an exciting time in the soccer calendar, of course, with everything that's
going on.
A lot going on, not just here in St. Louis, but of course around the world. But I want to start off, of course, with the biggest event here in this country, which was on Sunday night, the initial, CONCACAF Nations League final. Rivals USA versus Mexico, an extremely thrilling final match which the U.S. were able to come out on top of. It was just an amazing display of the atmosphere, the teams, what they're expecting in terms of going forward for World Cup qualifying, the Gold Cup coming up here. Just want to get your initial thoughts on what you witnessed in that match.
I think you said it best just a moment ago, Josh, when you said what we can look forward to. Because, boy, these World Cup qualifiers in Azteca and then here, wherever they're going to be played in the United States, these are going to be really some matches to look forward to. This wasn't the greatest soccer game, but it was one of the most entertaining without any question whatsoever. And anytime the United States can pull off a victory as the national team against anyone, but in particular within their main CONCACAF region, their main rival is always going to be Mexico. And no matter how it happens, no matter what has transpired or what occurred during the game, you come away with a win. And it's a huge win. Let's face it, this rivalry has always been intense, but for all intents and purposes, it really got going when the United States defeated Mexico way back in 1980 after 46 years of haplessness against Mexico. They win down at Lockhart Stadium in Fort Lauderdale. And then there's been other ties, victories, but the one that has really brought the rivalry to be one of the all-time greatest is when the United States beat Mexico in the World Cup. Not a qualifier, not a friendly, in the World Cup in 2002 as Landon Donovan and Brian McBride scored in the 8th minute. And I think Landon's goal, 65th, 70th minute, something like that. But that was a very good United States team, as was this new addition, this new young addition. And I think one of the things that Greg Berhalter said after the game was 100% right on. This is a young team that has to learn how to win. And how we do that, we're not certain. But we're going to go with our best players. And that's pretty much what you saw the other evening. The first 11 that he fielded, you're going to see a goodly number of these players when they have the opportunity, when there's a time for them for this to happen. We're hoping that there's not going to be as congested a schedule next year. But the players you saw on the field Sunday night in Denver, that's a pretty good, solid nucleus of the team you're going to see if indeed they do qualify for Qatar.
Well, Bill, I think you hit the main point on the head, because when you look at the match individually, right, it was the very first of its kind. It's for a trophy, yes, but still, first rendition of this tournament is merely more so just for bragging rights and claim a victory over Mexico. But going forward, like you said, the schedule is going to get congested. The games are going to get more and more high stakes. And like you talked a little bit about, it seems like the main thing with this team going forward, there's still some question marks as to who will start in certain positions. I don't think we got those questions fully answered during this tournament. But in terms of going forward, isn't the most important quality is we're not going to be the very best team in the world, passing, shooting, or anything like that, but we need to find ways to win. And it starts with these types of levels of opponents, correct?
Correct, Josh. And one of the first things that the Greg Berhalter would tell you is, I'm sure I wasn't in the room when he was being interviewed to become the head coach, but I think one of the first things that you're told as a candidate for the national team is qualify for the World Cup. And that's why, well, let's face it, in 2018, Holland didn't qualify. Italy didn't qualify. You said we're going to touch upon the Euros, and that's going to be a big test for Italy and Holland because they didn't qualify for the World Cup in 2018. But the United States and Greg Berhalter in particular, who, by the way, also, along with Landon Donovan, Claudio Reyna, Brian McBride, Eddie Pope, Greg Berhalter played as well on that 2002 team. It was an excellent center back. Brad Friedel was in goal, remember, Josh, and he was out of his mind. But this young team, very young team, and young players playing the sport now internationally, that's the nature of the game. But Greg Berhalter himself, when it comes to picking a final 23 players, if indeed they do to go to Qatar, I keep emphasizing that because you still have to qualify. And as we know, the United States didn't do so in 2018. But this is a whole different scheme of players. Players are literally a good 55, 60, 70 of them, all playing overseas and playing with teams of huge pedigree. Serginho Dest with Barcelona, so he's training on a daily basis with Lionel Messi. Weston McKennie is training on a daily basis at Juventus with Cristiano Ronaldo, two of the greatest players that will be recorded in the history of the game. And this is just an overall learning experience that these type of players, along with Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna, who's both main parts of this team, they bring to the younger players on this team. And you can see that Greg has used quite a few of these young players in all these other warm-up games, friendlies, qualifiers, things of that nature. So you will see, I think, however, still this team that we saw in Denver on Sunday night, that's going to be pretty much a nucleus for the team going forward.
Well, I'm excited to see how that nucleus will develop here in the coming months with the Gold Cup and with the World Cup qualifiers. But as we talked a little bit about, Bill, here in the tease, what's coming up this weekend is Euro 2020. It's been a year delay, so things are a little bit different. But before we get into the teams, and I want to obviously get your thoughts on who you're excited to see here in just a moment, I want to talk about the different dynamic with this tournament. 11 host cities. Never been done before. We're always used to having just one host. Now there will be 11. You've got all of your main players. I believe, France, Germany, the Netherlands, England, a lot of different countries will be hosting. What do you think of that dynamic? Is that going to help and hurt certain teams? How do you think it will impact the tournament?
As you mentioned, Josh, 11 different countries, and it'll affect different countries in different ways. England, for instance, this is going back to 1966, when in the World Cup in England, England played every game at Wembley Stadium. That's unheard of for a World Cup. A host nation travels someplace. They're playing their first three games at Wembley Stadium. So they have a comfortable surrounding. They're one of the favorites, again, because of the youth that they're bringing to this. But Michel Platini said it, I think, back in 2014, because this is the 60th anniversary, 60th birthday of the Euro competition. We wanted to bring it to different parts of Europe to make it more of an impactful celebration. And that's why there's 11 different cities. As easy to go and watch? Of course it isn't. It's much easier. But it'll give you like a World Cup atmosphere where there's so many different venues. And let's face it, other than the World Cup and the Champions League, this is one of the top competitions. One of, I say, because it's not every team in the world. There's nobody from South America here. That's why it's labeled Euros. We get that. But it's still an immense competition.
So let's get to the teams involved. France are the reigning World Cup champions. They're obviously going to be considered the favorite here. You've got Portugal, who are the reigning Euro champions with an improved squad from the last time they were out in Euro 2016. We talked about a couple teams who have returned here, Italy, the Netherlands, who weren't able to qualify for the World Cup, and also believe the Netherlands had a really poor showing last time out they were at the Euros, so they didn't qualify in 2016. And of course, you've got those other nations that could be, either considered dark horses, or you mentioned a couple other teams under pressure, like Belgium and England. Who are you looking forward to watching here at the Euros?
Well, some of the teams you just mentioned, obviously, Josh, I'm really looking forward to see what France can do. They won this in 2000 after having won the World Cup in 1998. Spain, they're always considered part of the overall equation, and the real novelty, the astounding aspect of this, that there is not, for the first time in history, a player from Real Madrid on Spain's national team. That's pretty much unheard of. But England, looking for a very first win in this overall competition. They have a distinct opportunity because of young players like Mason Mount and Phil Foden. Foden, who at the latter part of the year was in absolutely top form. Mount playing alongside of Kai Havertz from Germany and Christian Pulisic from the United States really made his mark this year. But Belgium, we've talked about this so many times before on your show, Josh. This will probably be the last chance for their quote unquote golden generation to do something of consequence. We're still not certain of the availability of Kevin De Bruyne. If Belgium takes the field without Kevin De Bruyne, they are a different soccer team, as would any team in the world be without a player like De Bruyne not being in the first 11. But Belgium has an opportunity. But some of the games that are going to be played, Portugal, as you talked about. Now, one of the things that Portugal is going to have to do is not strictly rely on Ronaldo for all their offense, and they don't have to. I think one of the younger players in the competition to really watch, I think, Josh, is João Felix. He's been in top form, and he's looking forward to putting on the national team shirt or playing with Ronaldo. And for a country like Portugal to have won the European Championship over some of these other giants, harkens back to the days of Eusebio when Portugal was doing things at the 66 World Cup. And outsiders, not outsiders, I should say that. Should I never say Germany's an outsider in any kind of competition. But they have solid players. They have some youthful players coming into established players like Toni Kroos and Ilkay Gundogan, who had a tremendous season for Manchester City. And it's going to be Joachim Löw's last competition with the national team. So as always, Josh, with stories like this competition and the World Cup, there are countless stories to talk about. And that's the youth of the some of the players coming in that we can watch. James Sando from England, Pedro Gonzalez from Spain. These are all great young players to watch. I mentioned Kai Havertz just a moment ago from Germany. Let's see what he can do with Timo Werner. See if Timo Werner can get unlocked and start throwing some goals for Germany, because they don't have a Miroslav Klose anymore. They don't have players. They still, like Belgium with De Bruyne, they still have Thomas Muller, who has an uncanny a GPS system, if you will, for the ball. He is always around the ball. And when these German players put on the white, they become different people. They become different soccer players representing their country.
We've seen it time and time again. I think you make a good point about some of those teams like Germany, Spain, the Netherlands. They may not be considered the favorite, but you cannot absolutely not write them off in terms of having to run here. And also dynamic to look forward to, as we saw at Euro 2016, Iceland, Wales,
yes,
Northern Ireland to an extent. There's going to be some surprises, and there are a couple of teams that I'm looking out for to be on that type of path. As long as they can just get out of the group stage, you never know what could happen. So I'm interested to hear that dynamic.
And another team, Josh, Scotland. Now, Scotland has not done anything of consequence in the World Cup, but they're going to be playing England. We don't need to go over the history of Scotland against England, but to see them play on a soccer field, that's fairly early in the competition, June 18th. And again, that game's at Wembley Stadium, where the semifinals and the finals will be, along with the first round games. But it's an intriguing competition. Whenever you can see, and we've always talked about this on the show, this is not a city against a city, not a club against a club. This is a country against a country. This is what makes this sport so compelling to watch. When these players put on these national team shirts, I mentioned about Germany a moment ago, they become different people. They're representing their country now, and some of these smaller countries have an opportunity to prove that they're worthy of being ranked with some of the overall international giants.
And we just saw that in World Cup qualifying with North Macedonia, who are debuting.
Precisely.
They beat Germany in World Cup qualifying. So
North Macedonia, who are probably listed as the 23rd or 24th team in this competition, but nonetheless, on that particular day, they beat a team with 4 stars on their shirt. It's unheard of.
Exactly. Bill, let's transition over to a local topic to wrap things up here. We've both been watching St. Louis Scott Gallagher this season in their inaugural USL 2 season. A lot of intriguing prospects here to watch out for, guys who have had very successful college seasons who have come here and have gotten together with this team. They just started picking up their first few results after they started out with a very tough schedule, playing the toughest opponent in their conference. What has impressed you so much so far with this team in their inaugural season?
What's really impressed me, Josh, I watch them at training on a regular basis, is the highly competitive aspect of the training session. These are all players who, a goodly number of whom, have played for St. Louis Scott Gallagher throughout their youth. Now they're gone to various and assorted colleges, but they're all coming back to play for their club team, in essence to show that St. Louis is indeed still one of the original soccer hotbeds in the United States. That's what I really like to see. And there's also a good opportunity for these players in the off season, which is not that long, to not just sit around and just occasionally play a pickup game, but to be have a sense of a solid competitive aspect to their summers. And that's exactly what's happening. Now, they're not going to be playing all summer long, not that many games, but nonetheless, they're still active and they're getting ready to go back to college. But to see the uniformity of these players coming back to represent the club in which they grew up, again, a goodly number of them, that's what's really compelling to me.
So, Bill, I'm going to ask you to put your prediction cap on here and kind of see the future a little bit here. This is my final question, because we've seen at these matches, or at least I've seen, the St. Louis City SC front office group, sporting director Lutz Pfannenstiel and the rest of his staff at these matches, presumably scouting talent. Now, with their academy teams coming up in MLS Next, I'm not sure if the age groups match up, but still, they're building the academy team as a whole, the academy system as a whole. I'm sure fans around here will want to know, in terms of these guys out on the pitch for St. Louis Scott Gallagher at this time, later on down the road, are we looking at maybe 1 or 2 players who could potentially be wearing that St. Louis City SC kit in a few years' time when they eventually join up here in MLS?
It's a possibility, Josh. And if not in this particular age group, which is a little bit older, these are college players, maybe the 05s or the 06s, where the academy system is really strong for St. Louis City SC. They just completed their overall sessions last week on Wednesday night to try to get as many players from the open competition. The players came in literally from around the country to try to make their way. Everybody's trying to make their way and get into the MLS squad. But Lutz Pfannenstiel, you brought up Lutz's name. He has been steadfast in the opinion that he would like to see one or two players from the city academy system to be on that first team, that first selection for that first game in March of 2023. So the academy system for St. Louis City is going to be a huge, integral part of their overall team.
Well, again, it's been very exciting to watch this team. They're out at the soccer park. They return home this Saturday, I believe, take on a team from Chicago.
Right.
In their conference, the season is fast approaching in terms of the conclusion of it. They're in the midway point at this point, but still, there's a lot of soccer going on here in St. Louis to complement what is going on internationally. So, of course, again, looking forward to seeing it all. And, of course, hearing your perspective on it, Bill. It's always a pleasure. Great to always talk soccer with you. Thanks again for joining me on the show this week.
Josh, anytime. Always my pleasure.
My thanks to Bill for once again joining me on the show. That'll do it for this episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. The content is going to be coming at a fast and furious pace over the next few weeks. I hope to get out to a lot of these local St. Louis matches and try to get some post-game sound from the players and coaches for you all. Of course, in terms of Euro 2020, you can always check out my coverage here. And also, I'll be writing a few more articles, match recaps, opinion pieces for the Beautiful Game Network. You should go and check that out. I believe it's bgn.fm if you want to go check out, see my written work. Also, I believe that we'll be taping a brand new episode of Atletico TV next week, so you'll be sure and want to check that out. Again, we've reached a fantastic point in the soccer calendar. Euro 2020 is here. The soccer scene here in St. Louis is really ramping up. Enjoy as much of it as you can, and I can't wait to be back here with a jam-packed episode next week. Enjoy the weekend of soccer.